The old man hit the ground with a thud. He curled inward, shielding himself as harsh laughter echoed off the pavement. 5 bikers hovered nearby, grinning like they'd just watched a magic trick. No one stepped in. No one cared. But what they didn't know was that less than an hour later, that same parking lot would be filled with something far louder. Military-grade engines, uniforms, and consequences. Sam Whitmore nudged his aging Ford pickup into the pump lane. The Nevada heat rose in waves from the ground, blurring the edges of the cracked asphalt. His truck coughed as it idled, stubborn, loud, and loyal. Sam, now 80, wore the years plainly. His stride was stiff but certain, and his veteran's cap, sun-faded and slightly bent, rested proudly on his head. He moved with effort, but not hesitation. Scars from another continent shaped his rhythm. His left knee hadn't fully forgiven a day in 1971, and his back sometimes felt like it carried the whole war. The truck had shared the journey. Rust edged its frame like a tattoo of age. The paint, once bright blue, had surrendered to sun and time. But like its owner, it never quit. Sam reached for his wallet, tugging out a wrinkled discount card marked Veteran. With a quiet breath, he headed toward the small convenience store. By the air pump, 5 men leaned against their motorcycles. Their jackets were patched with names, skulls, and fire. Their arms were inked, but not in remembrance, not in service. They watched Sam walk by, their boredom turning into interest. "Damn," one muttered, nodding toward the pickup. "That bucket still runs?" Another laughed. "Museum called. Wants their display back." Sam kept walking. The jokes didn't touch him. He'd been mocked before, once in languages the men mocking him wouldn't understand. Inside the shop, he paid for fuel and a bottle of water. The girl behind the counter didn't lift her eyes from her phone. Sam didn't expect her to. He preferred the quiet anyway. Outside, he removed the gas cap, steadied his trembling hand, and began to fill the tank. Every movement required focus now. Once, these hands had patched up gunshot wounds, written letters to families, and radioed coordinates under enemy fire. Now, they gripped plastic and shook slightly. He didn't notice the man beside him until a shadow slid over his arm. "That thing legal?" the biker asked, gesturing at the truck with a smirk. "Looks like it rolled out of a junkyard." Sam glanced over. "Gets me where I need to be," he said. The biker leaned in, the scent of smoke and sweat trailing behind him. "Not every place wants you, old man." The others wandered closer, their interest growing. One kicked at the truck's tire like he was testing livestock. Sam stayed calm. "Just filling up, that's all." "No trouble?" another said, voice thick with sarcasm. "You sure about that?" A boot knocked the gas can from Sam's hand. Fuel splashed across the cement like spilled history. Sam crouched to retrieve it, but the first biker shoved him with a laugh. His body folded mid-step. His shoulder hit first, then his hip. The sting was sharp, immediate. He lay there for a breath, hearing only the sound of their laughter. His palms scraped raw, his dignity bleeding unseen. To them, it was just fun. But in 58 minutes, that station would be filled with boots, commands, and men who remembered exactly who Sam Whitmore was. The laughter that echoed behind him wasn't just loud. It was that specific brand of cruelty that comes from those who've never had to prove their strength in anything that mattered. "Dude can't even stay on his feet," one of the bikers cracked. Sam heard them, but he didn't look back. Around him, life kept moving, untouched and uninterested. A woman pulled her child into an SUV, glancing once before driving off. A trucker in a ball cap looked away. A teenager across the lot raised his phone, but lowered his conscience. Sam stayed on the ground for a few seconds longer, not because he couldn't rise, but because of what had settled in his chest. A heaviness deeper than bruises. "This," he thought, "is the freedom I bled for, the right to ignore the broken." Slowly, with effort carved from years of grit, Sam pushed himself upright. A smear of blood slipped down his temple, but he didn't bother with it. He stood as tall as his joints would let him, turned his back to the laughter, and eased behind the wheel of his truck. The crowd made room, disappointed by the absence of pleading or protest. Their grins faded as he drove away, and their chuckles trailed behind like weak echoes. They hadn't noticed the steel behind his silence. They hadn't seen the same resolve that had once driven him through firefights no one now teaches in history books. And they definitely didn't realize. Sam Whitmore was never the kind of man to chase revenge. But he'd always known when something needed to be answered. Blood trickled past his cheek as he drove with one hand steady on the wheel and the other pressing against his temple. Head wounds looked worse than they were, but the pain in his hip was real. He turned off the main road and into Hank's auto. The truck had been coughing under acceleration lately, and now seemed as good a time as any. Maybe fixing something mechanical would distract from everything else. Inside, the mechanic's son, Mike, glanced up from behind a computer screen. He blinked at the sight of Sam's bloodied face, but didn't rise from his chair. "You all right, sir?" he asked cautiously. "I'm good," Sam replied. "Just wondered if you could check the engine. Feels like it's slipping in second." Mike stepped out, gave the Ford a quick look, then shook his head. "Sorry, we don't really work on trucks this old. Parts are impossible to get. Honestly, it's probably not worth the time." Sam nodded once. Message received. Not worth the parts. Not worth the effort. He returned to the truck and drove off without another word. As he wound through streets, he knew better than most men knew their own memories. A quiet ache rolled through him, not just in his hip, but somewhere deeper. Laos. He remembered the heat, the silent march through enemy territory, the man he'd carried 3 miles on his back, both of them bleeding but refusing to die out there. And now he lived in a country where someone could mock his limp and call it comedy, where his sacrifice was currency long since spent. He parked at the town's Central Park and found an old bench beneath an oak tree. From his pocket, he took out a worn handkerchief and gently dabbed at the blood along his temple. Pain throbbed in his shoulder. His side ached. Across the park, a boy selling lemonade caught sight of him and took a step forward, a cup in hand. But his mother's sharp whisper stopped him cold. Sam looked away as the boy returned to his table. He'd never asked for thanks. But being invisible, that still hurt. Compassion shouldn't require tragedy to awaken. But on that summer sidewalk, it remained asleep. A pack of teens passed by, laughing at a joke only they found funny. "Hey," one said loud enough to carry. "Walking Dead audition's over, man." Another added, "Looks like he's served with Lincoln." Sam didn't flinch. Mockery was nothing new. Not when you've survived bullets, fire, and the deafening silence that follows both. He reached into his wallet and removed something far more valuable than cash. A photo. The edges were curled, the ink faded, but the moment it captured had never dimmed. 8 soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, dirt on their boots, sweat on their brows, and pride behind tired smiles. Sam stood far right. Younger then, muscles tight, eyes just as focused. On the back, 8 names scribbled in steady hand. Beneath them, 6 words. Whiskey Team. The ones who came back. Tucked behind the photograph was something he hadn't touched in decades. A small, stiff card with a number printed above 6 words. Emergency contact only. Special Forces Group 72. He'd carried that card through funerals, surgeries, and nights so dark they nearly swallowed him. He'd never called it. Never once. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the belief that a man should bear his burdens alone. But something in him cracked today. Not a bone. His body had withstood worse. What broke was quieter. His faith in the idea that sacrifice earned understanding. That being a veteran still meant something. He pulled out his old flip phone. Its hinge creaked. His fingers, sore from the fall, hovered over the keys. Then, he began to dial. He didn't expect an answer. Surely the line had long gone dark. The team? Scattered. The world had moved on. But the phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice, sharp, level, exacting. "Verification code?" Sam froze, just for a second. Then memory stepped in where his nerves faltered. "Whiskey 72 Delta," he said. "Name's Whitmore. Samuel Whitmore." Silence. Then a shift in tone. Recognition. "Stand by, Sergeant Major." The voice disappeared. Seconds passed. Then another voice took its place. Gravelly, precise, instantly familiar. "Sam Whitmore. Been too damn long." Sam blinked. "That you, Colonel?" "Still breathing. Barely. Situation?" Sam's throat tightened. He hadn't cried during combat. Hadn't cried at his wife's funeral. But this, "I need the team, sir." No hesitation, no disbelief, just 3 words. "Help is coming." 200 miles away, inside a modest brick building bearing a faded sign, Veterans of Special Forces Association. Retired Colonel James Harrington, now 75 and built like a storm that never passed, stood and reached for a locked case. He opened a secure line. "Activate Whiskey Team Emergency Assembly. Samuel Whitmore has initiated protocol." Phones started ringing. Within 10 minutes, 6 calls hit phones across 3 states. Men in their 60s and 70s paused in barbershops, backyards, and garages. Each one had a scar that matched a name. Each one once followed a man who never failed to bring them home. And when they heard his name, not one of them hesitated. The call went out like a flare in the dark. No explanations. No hesitation. Each man responded the only way he knew how: by moving. In a quiet Pennsylvania suburb, David Reeves opened a cabinet no one in his family even knew existed. Inside, a vest hung ready. Its color hadn't faded. Neither had the oath it represented. In a Virginia cabin beside a quiet lake, Michael Jenkins stood up from his fishing stool, said nothing to his friends, and walked straight to his truck. They didn't ask where he was going. In Maryland, Dr. Thomas Wilson closed his office door, told the front desk to cancel the afternoon schedule, and walked out. "Family matter," he said. But the look in his eyes said more. They came from different states, from different lives, carrying weight that never left them. Old warriors drawn by something deeper than orders. Loyalty, history, brotherhood. Back in the park, Sam sat beneath the same tree, his shoulders settled, but his mind alert. His temple had stopped bleeding, but the ache across his body was louder than ever. He didn't sleep. Men like Sam rarely did in full. His rest came in short waves, always with one ear open to the world around him. Across the grass, the same pack of bikers rolled in, their engines cutting through the peace like chainsaws. Tires screeched, music blared. They didn't notice Sam sitting there, or maybe they did, and just didn't care. One did a wheelie near the playground, prompting a cluster of mothers to gather their children and leave. Sam didn't move. He didn't announce himself. He didn't need to. He just waited. 48 minutes after his call, the first black SUV pulled in from the main road, government plates glinting, a small flag sticker on the bumper. It parked slowly, deliberately. 3 minutes later, a second appeared from a different direction, then another, and another. 5 total. They parked not randomly, but with purpose. Their formation was clean, efficient, practiced. Sam's eyes narrowed slightly. He knew that pattern. He'd helped write it, somewhere over Laos, decades earlier. The bikers noticed the vehicles now, casting glances. Shrugs turned to whispers. Then every door opened at once. The timing was perfect. Not forced, not theatrical, just trained. And from each door stepped a man who didn't need to wear rank to command attention. They were older, but not soft. Every step they took carried the rhythm of past deployments. Black shirts stretched across still powerful frames. The Special Forces emblem stitched subtly at the heart. The park began to shift. Voices dropped. Children stilled. Something about the way these men moved, deliberate, in sync, made people understand without being told. This wasn't normal. This was history arriving. The bikers straightened, their earlier bravado flickering beneath the sudden weight of presence. Colonel Harrington reached Sam first. He knelt, not out of weakness, but reverence. "Sergeant Major Whitmore," he said firmly, clearly, with the pride of a man who knew exactly who he was speaking to. "Whiskey team, assembled and accounted for." Sam's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but almost. A flicker of warmth cut through the years etched into his face. "You didn't have to all come," he murmured. David Reeves stepped forward. "It was always all or none, Sergeant Major. You know that." Thomas Wilson crouched next. He began to check Sam's face with the efficiency of a medic whose hands still remembered how to stop battlefield bleeding. He didn't ask for details. Just one question, delivered in a voice calm as rain. "Who touched you?" The air in the park changed. It wasn't fear, but reverence. Sam pointed calmly toward the group that had harassed him, saying nothing. That subtle gesture was all it took. Colonel Harrington stood and turned toward the bikers. His face was calm, but the weight behind his gaze made even the boldest of them hesitate. "This man," Harrington said, voice carrying to the furthest corners of the park, "is Medal of Honor recipient Sergeant Major Samuel Whitmore." The hush was instant. The atmosphere shifted. Conversations died in throats. Cell phones rose. "Lies," one biker scoffed, but his voice faltered halfway through. "He's just some random old dude." That's when Michael Jenkins stepped forward. Around his neck a pair of tags glinted faintly. With one smooth motion, he lifted them over his head. Dog tags, yes, but dangling from them, unmistakably, was a Medal of Honor. 1971, Jenkins said. Sergeant Major Whitmore led a mission no one thought would succeed. 14 Americans were trapped. We were surrounded. When the pickup went sideways, He held the perimeter alone. 3 gunshot wounds. Didn't stop firing until the last chopper lifted. He was the last man aboard. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the bystanders, then awe. He saved 6 of us, Jenkins continued. I know. I was one of them. Now it was the bikers who couldn't meet anyone's eyes. One stepped back. Another shoved his hands deep into his pockets. Gaze dropped to the dirt. Thomas Wilson steadied Sam, helping him rise. Though bruised, he stood tall. The decades dropped away from his frame as the familiar weight of discipline returned to his spine. The bikers, once so loud, now shrank under the growing presence around them. We didn't mean, the lead biker began. But you did, Harrington cut in. Not with rage, but judgment. You didn't ask who he was. You didn't care. You thought hurting someone smaller, older, was power. News crews were arriving now. Cameras turned. Police vehicles pulled in. Sirens silent, but lights spinning slowly. The crowd grew. Then, one of the younger bikers stepped forward. His face pale, voice cracked. My grandfather fought in Vietnam, he said. He used to talk about men like him. If he saw me today, he stopped. Shame choked the rest of his sentence. Sam looked into the boy's face, eyes searching. Then calmly. Then be the kind of man he'd have respected. From the last SUV, a new figure emerged. An officer in dress uniform, hands carrying a polished mahogany box. He stepped toward Sam with military precision and opened the lid. Inside, cushioned in blue velvet, was a pristine Medal of Honor. Yours was stolen during a home robbery in '89, the officer explained. The department authorized a replacement. We've been trying to find you for years. Sam stared at the medal. For a long time he said nothing. His hand hovered over it, then dropped to his side. I never wore it for show, he murmured. We know, Harrington answered. That's exactly why it belongs to you. That evening, the town church overflowed with people. Word had spread, first through social feeds, then through news anchors. The story of a war hero forgotten by the world but remembered by his brothers had stirred something deep. Sam sat near the front, uneasy in the spotlight, as his old team stood quietly behind him. Not guards, not protection, family. They didn't come in dress blues or polished armor, just old men with silver hair, backs straightened by muscle memory, eyes sharpened by memory. They surrounded Sam at the church that evening, not as guests, but as a living honor guard. The small-town chapel had never seen such a crowd. Folding chairs lined the aisles. Local press stood respectfully in the back. And at the front, the mayor, flanked by civic leaders, spoke with a raw sincerity. For half a century, Sergeant Major Whitmore lived right here among us. Bought groceries, pumped gas, raised his family, and somehow, we never saw him. Sam sat silently, hands folded, cap in his lap. He didn't lift his gaze. I never called my team to be recognized, he said when they offered him the microphone. I called them because I needed to remember that once. We never left a man behind. Not in the jungle. Not at home. He paused, letting the silence say what words couldn't. Faces watched him closely. Some familiar, some who had once passed him in silence. People who had seen an old man, but never looked closely enough to notice who he really was. I don't fault anyone for not knowing, Sam continued. I chose to live quietly, but maybe next time, before you look past the man with the limp or the woman struggling with her bags, just pause. Their battles might not be in books. Doesn't mean they're not real. Near the front, the boy with the lemonade cup from earlier broke from his mother's grip. This time, she didn't stop him. Clutching a small bunch of wildflowers, he stepped up to Sam. My dad's a soldier, too, he whispered. He said the real heroes don't always wear armor. Sam's hand trembled as he accepted the flowers. Your dad's right, he replied gently. Courage lives on the inside. The crowd stood to applaud, not for a speech, but for a truth they had nearly forgotten. A truth that walked with a cane, wore rust-stained khakis, and never once asked for thanks. Afterward, the town council announced plans to erect a monument in the park, a place to honor veterans who'd returned without parades. Its inscription would be simple: honor never fades. Before leaving the church, the bikers approached. This time, no arrogance. Their leader stepped forward, remorse written deep in his posture. We can't undo what we did, he said. But from now on, our club's offering free escorts for every veteran funeral or event. No charge. Wherever, whenever. Sam looked at them quietly, then nodded once. Forgiveness, when earned, was something a soldier understood. Outside, 3 mechanics stood beside Sam's old Ford. tools in hand. They'd already arranged to restore it at no cost. A fresh bumper sticker had been added. Proud veteran. Subtle. Unapologetic. Colonel Harrington walked up and placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "Will you be okay, Sam?" Sam glanced out at the town now awake to his presence. He took in the faces. Some tearful, some grateful, all changed. "I think they finally saw me," he said. "You never stopped standing," Harrington answered. "We just forgot how to look up." The whiskey team gathered one last time. Old bones, strong hearts. They clapped Sam on the back, embraced like they had 50 years ago under rotor blades and gunfire. Sam drove home that night with the windows down. For once, he wasn't just the quiet old man. He was Sergeant Major Whitmore. Some heroes carry medals, others carry scars. Both deserve to be seen. Have you ever witnessed someone forgotten suddenly remembered? Share their story, because dignity is not a gift, it's a right.